Welcome back. Welcome to the Premier Mindset by Premier Performance LLC. I'm your host, Trent Mahler, LCSW, licensed clinical therapist and performance coach, and this is episode 46. This is an episode for high performers, high achievers, and anyone who pushes themselves relentlessly, often at the cost of rest. Today, we're going to tackle a topic that's deceptively simple on the surface, but massively misunderstood: rest. Why it often feels like weakness, why that perception is a trap, and most importantly, how to reclaim rest as a powerful tool for performance, resilience, and growth. High performers are wired to keep moving. We thrive on discipline, consistency, and pushing boundaries. Rest? It feels counterintuitive. It feels like giving up, like letting momentum slip, like falling behind while everyone else is charging forward. But here's the truth that most high achievers don't want to hear: rest is not optional. And more than that, resisting rest is one of the fastest ways to sabotage your performance, your energy, and your long-term results. In this episode, we're breaking down the cultural and internalized reasons why rest feels like weakness. We're exploring the neuroscience behind performance and recovery, and I'll provide concrete strategies you can implement immediately to start resting without guilt, to actually enhance your energy, focus, and output. We'll include real-life examples of high performers who learned this the hard way and others who leveraged it to multiply their effectiveness. Quick note before we dive in: this podcast is for education and performance growth. It's not a replacement for therapy or medical treatment. If there's something you need, make sure you go and get it. On top of that, we have all of our social media accounts linked in the episode description, so make sure to get involved there. That's where you can find all of these places we do post, whether it be content, we post things daily, or announcements, or anything long form too. So make sure to get involved in those communities as we continue to build. Now, let's start with a fundamental truth. High performers often misinterpret fatigue as a moral failing. We equate pushing through exhaustion with dedication. We praise ourselves for grinding, for saying yes when we're stretched too thin, for outperforming everyone around us, and there's a societal echo chamber reinforcing it. Sleep is for the weak. Hustle harder. Don't stop. I'm sure these are things that you guys have heard before. This mindset creates a hidden cost. Fatigue accumulates silently. Focus narrows. Creativity diminishes. Emotional regulation becomes fragile. Decisions, once sharp and strategic, start to feel harder. Relationships get strained. And yet we keep moving because taking a break feels like surrendering. Let's start off with a real world example. Confidentiality is always applied in all these stories, so it'll be completely private and anonymous, but we'll call this person Alex. Alex is a founder of a fast growing company. He's brilliant, disciplined, relentless. He believed working 80 to 90 hours a week was necessary to succeed. Sleep was a negotiable commodity. Weekends were optional. And at first, it seemed to work. Deals closed, teams rallied, revenue grew. But over time, Alex's performance began to plateau without him realizing it. Mistakes crept in. Communication with his team became tense. Decisions that used to be effortless now caused hours of rumination. He didn't see it as fatigue. He saw it as a personal failure. He was convinced that if he rested even for a day, he'd fall behind. What Alex didn't know then, and what high performers often miss, is that rest is a performance multiplier, not a liability. Research in cognitive neuroscience shows that the brain consolidates learning, creativity, and decision making during rest. Physical recovery, emotional regulation, and memory integration happen when we step back, not when we push harder. There's a phenomenon called ego depletion in psychology. It describes how the capacity for self-control, focus, and executive decision-making diminishes when we overwork ourselves without recovery. When your mental energy is low, your judgment suffers. Your emotional resilience declines, and the very qualities that make you a high performer start to falter. This is where the guilt around rest comes in. For high performers, rest feels like weakness because it triggers a story in our heads. If I stop now, I'm failing. But that story is a cognitive distortion. It's not a reflection of reality. It's a narrative we've internalized from culture, upbringing, and competitive environments. Recognizing that narrative is the first tool in shifting our approach to rest, as recognition is always the first step. One way to combat this is by naming the narrative. When you notice rest feels wrong, pause and ask, what story am I telling myself right now? Am I really falling behind, or am I conditioned to feel guilty for stepping back? Identifying the narrative is the first step toward rewiring your perception. Now let's talk about the types of rest, as there are a few. Many people just think about rest in terms of sleep, but that's not the full picture. Rest is multidimensional. It could be physical, mental, emotional, or even social. Physical rest usually includes sleep. It could be naps. It could be stretching or just slowing your body's demands down. It's just kind of slowing things down in general, letting your body physically rest. Mental rest, on the other hand, involves giving your brain downtime from complex problem solving or hyper focused tasks, being able to do things that feel a little more mindless or a little bit less stressful. Emotional rest is allowing yourself to process feelings, release tension, and step back from environments that drain you. We're going to go deeper into this in other episodes, but that emotional rest is very important, especially for people in high demand situations. You see this a lot with first responders, is they have to deal with things, so they try to not process the things they're feeling and what's going on in the moment, which is totally understandable. But the issue isn't how they're doing that. The issue is that they never turn it back on to actually process it and deal with it. That's where problems go on. We also have social rest, which is taking a break from relationships or interactions that are taxing, even temporarily, just to recharge our relational energy. You may have felt this before. Sometimes we're all peopled out. And it's not that seeing people or being around people we care about is a bad thing. It's just sometimes we need time for just us. Solitude can sometimes be nice, and solitude isn't always just isolation. High performers tend to excel at physical rest avoidance, pushing through fatigue with coffee, energy drinks, or sheer willpower. Think of how many jokes are out there about just give me another cup of coffee and I'll just push through this thing. How many times we openly talk about just pushing through our body signals that we need rest and recovery. And sometimes it's hard to get that. But if we're meaningful with how we're doing these things and we're very purposeful with how we're trying to get it done, we can make sure to give ourselves this rest in the way we need to. And we're going to go over that in depth all through this episode today. So let's jump into another story. In this story, we're going to call the person Samantha. Samantha is a professional athlete that I worked with. She was winning competitions, hitting personal records, and constantly pushing herself in training. But she started noticing she was irritable with coaches, anxious during practice, and struggling with her sleep. Her solution? It was to train harder, add more hours, increase intensity. As that's what she did before. When things went wrong, she did more. And in the past, she tended to just outwork whatever was going on, and she would find success. But in this situation, nothing worked. When we examined her schedule, it wasn't a lack of physical effort that was the problem. It was cognitive and emotional overload. She was never stepping out of her mental and emotional grind. As we introduced deliberate rest periods, like short mental breaks during training, journaling to offload thoughts, and evenings without notifications, this all allowed her nervous system to recover. And within weeks, her performance spiked, her mood improved, and sleep returned. One way you can do this for yourself is with micro rest blocks. High performers can integrate small periods of rest without feeling like they're giving up. An example can be a 10-minute meditation before meetings, short walks without your phone, 15 minutes of journaling after a deep work session. These micro rests reset your nervous system, restore focus, and reduce cumulative fatigue. Let's address a common fear, which is the idea if I rest, I'll lose momentum. Here's the paradox though. Rest often creates momentum. Think of it like charging a battery. You cannot run at full power if your energy is depleted. Yet most high achievers try to keep the battery on empty, assuming they can maintain output. Resting strategically actually lets you operate at higher output than constant effort. This is why scheduled strategic rest is so important. High performers benefit from proactively scheduling rest, rather than waiting for burnout to force it. That blocks times for sleep, mental breaks, and even social withdrawal if when necessary. Treat rest like a non-negotiable task on your calendar, the same way you treat meetings or deadlines. We also need to address the identity factor. Many high performers tie their self-worth to relentless activity. I'm only valuable if I'm producing. This is a trap. Your worth isn't measured by the hours you grind, it's measured by the quality, impact, and sustainability of your performance. Accepting rest is not weakness, it's a sign of mastery over your own limits. Now let's explore the neuroscience behind rest, why your body and brain actually need it, and why ignoring it is so costly for high performers. Understanding this is key because once you see rest as a biological imperative rather than a luxury, it becomes easier to accept and integrate. At a cellular level, rest allows your nervous system to reset. Chronic stress and overwork triggers the release of cortisol and adrenaline, which keeps your body in a heightened state of alert. Short term, this is adaptive. It helps you focus, meet deadlines, and respond to challenges. Long term, it's toxic. Without adequate rest, your body stays in fight or flight mode. Your heart rate stays elevated, your cognitive flexibility declines, and your ability to regulate emotions and make clear decisions erodes. Neuroscientists have also shown that sleep in particular consolidates memory and learning. If you're grinding through long hours without sleep, your brain literally struggles to retain information and problem solve creatively. High performers who resist rest often hit a strange paradox. They're working harder but getting less done. Their efficiency and insight suffer without them even realizing it. Here's another story for the field. I'll call him Marcus, a corporate executive overseeing multiple teams across continents. Marcus prided himself on running 16-hour days, answering emails at 11 p.m., and rarely taking weekends. Initially, he felt invincible. He saw his productivity is unmatched. But over 6 months, Marcus began making micro errors. He would miss deadlines, there would be miscommunications, even small strategic miscalculations that previously would have been caught instantly. He felt mentally foggy and emotionally short with his team. Marcus interpreted this as personal weakness. He thought he wasn't disciplined enough. He tried to push harder, adding even more hours and meetings to compensate. What Marcus didn't realize was that he was suffering from cognitive fatigue compounded by chronic underrest. His nervous system had become dysregulated. Once he implemented a structured rest plan, sleep prioritization, breaks during high stakes meetings, and daily 20-minute decompress sessions, his focus, decision making, and emotional control returned to levels he hadn't experienced in months. It's not just about pushing harder. It's all about balance. And if we lose that message, you are going to fall and you're going to collapse. This is a perfect segue into another tool, which is using rest as a performance intervention. We want to start treating rest not as downtime, but as a deliberate performance tool. For high performers, the language shift matters. Instead of thinking I'm not doing anything, we have to reframe it as I'm recharging my system to perform at a higher level later. That cognitive reframing alone reduces guilt and improves adherence. Going further with that, let's break down some practical strategies to integrate rest spread throughout your day and week without sacrificing productivity or momentum. One way is the active pause technique. Every 90 to 120 minutes of focused work, schedule a 5 to 10 minute active pause. To do this, you want to step away from your desk, maybe do a short walk or a stretch, and we want to avoid screens during this time. Research shows that attention and focus naturally decline after about 90 minutes. Short pauses can restore that cognitive sharpness. So don't let things dwindle. Let's let it reset and recharge so we can get back to the work. A big one nowadays is digital boundaries for mental rest. Constant notifications and emails prevent mental rest. High performers often feel guilty ignoring them, but strategically muting notifications during focus or rest periods is critical. Use scheduled email checks or app timers to enforce mental downtime. We love to tell ourselves that scrolling on social media is rest, but it is not. We have to do things that are actually resting us. Make sure you're doing something that's going to feel fulfilling and it's not hollow where you feel like you're going to get something good from it, but at the end of it, you just waste a bunch of time. We also need to make sleep as a non negotiable. For peak performance, we need to aim for 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. High achievers often skimp on sleep because they're gaining hours of productivity. The reality is, though, that sleep loss decreases creative problem solving, memory retention, and even emotional regulation, all essential for elite performance. So while we think we're saving time by not sleeping, all we're doing is making ourselves more ineffective, which means we have to take more time to do the work in the first place. So you don't actually get anything more done, and you feel worse on top of it. Sounds like not really a great choice in the end run. Emotional offloading is also crucial throughout the process. Journaling, speaking with a trusted mentor or coach, or even brief reflection sessions can offload emotional stress. This is especially important for leaders managing teams because unprocessed stress accumulates and amplifies fatigue, subtly eroding clarity and patience. Now it's time. Let's discuss a common obstacle: the social and cultural messaging that rest is weakness. Many high performers come from environments where family, sports, school, corporate culture, all of these places where resting is framed as laziness. This narrative is reinforced with phrases like push through it, sleep is for the weak, or sacrifice now to succeed later. The problem is, these narratives aren't neutral, they create internal conflict. High performers hear the rational argument for rest, but the ingrained message triggers guilt, shame, or fear of losing status. That internal tension prevents effective rest and leads to overwork disguised as discipline. To make it easier to use rest, we must focus on cognitive reframing the idea of rest. When guilt arises, like we talked about a little bit earlier, pause and ask yourself, what am I telling myself about rest right now? Am I confusing temporary discomfort with long term failure? And what would a highly effective rested version of me do right now? Reframing rest as a strategic investment in performance rather than a moral failing is essential for high performers. Let's cover another real world example where some of these things show. I'll call this person Alyssa. Alyssa is a top tiered lawyer at a law firm. Alyssa's reputation was built on relentless work ethic, late nights, weekend hours, and constant availability. She equated rest with incompetence. Over time, Alyssa's team noticed she was irritable, reactive in meetings, and slower at complex tasks. She also experienced anxiety and difficulty sleeping, ironically caused by overwork. Alyssa's breakthrough came when she accepted rest as part of her professional excellence. She instituted a strict no email evenings, short meditation breaks during the day, and committed to at least 7 hours of sleep nightly. Her performance didn't decline, it improved. Her decision making became sharper, she had more energy for her clients, and her team engagement rose. Here's a critical point for high performers: you will resist rest. You will feel restless during downtime. That discomfort is normal. Your nervous system has been trained to high arousal and constant output. Accepting rest requires progressive adaptation, like you're training a muscle. And just because it is uncomfortable doesn't mean it's bad. Sometimes we just need time to adjust. There's one thing that we get confused all the time, and I have this conversation a lot, which is we think good things all feel good. And that's not true at all. Sometimes the best things for us don't feel that good to do. Sometimes we have to push towards the discomfort and embrace it because while it's uncomfortable, we may need it. We can help ourselves get there through gradual rest conditioning. We want to first start small. Introduce micro rest breaks, gradually increasing duration and complexity. Maybe you start with 5 to 10-minute breaks, then maybe a half day mental reset, then maybe full rest days at a certain point. We start small because it's going to be hard to build these things in, especially if you've never had it in your routine. And if you're expecting to go from never resting at all to taking a full day off, That's going to be pretty hard to do. So we can just start small with the 5 to 10 minute breaks and see how that goes. While we're doing that, we want to track performance improvements and observe how energy, focus, and clarity improves. This will help us continue to do it as you're seeing this performance increase, you're going to want to continue to do it and continue to make this investment into yourself. And as we do these things, the nervous system adapts. But to adapt, we need exposure. And this is how we give it to us, is we embrace the discomfort and push ourselves towards it so we can really experience it. And then from there, we let ourselves adjust. Another major barrier is identity confusion. Many high performers see themselves as doers, not pausers. Rest feels like betraying their self-image. Addressing this requires an identity shift. Instead of I am the person who always pushes, adopt the mindset I am the person who maximizes output sustainably, which requires deliberate recovery. This mindset is much more helpful for us in terms of reaching high performance and staying there. Where the other side of I am the person who always pushes is a great recipe to burn down and break down. This brings us to another tool. It's called identity alignment. To do this, you write down your professional identity as it relates to rest. For example, I am disciplined, I am strategic. I am someone who uses rest as a performance multiplier. Aligning rest with your identity rather than positioning it as a threat can change your behavior automatically. If you find your identity is not connected to rest, then this is a sign to start brainstorming how to get it involved. And if you feel completely lost, reach out to me and let me know, and we can set it up together and figure out what it is. Now let's talk about the compounding cost of ignoring rest, which high performers rarely see until it's too late. This is why we discussed this topic in detail in episode 42 and went over the breakpoint, so we could try and notice more and more signals earlier on, so when we do need something or we need to pivot, we can do those things to avoid burnout from occurring. The quicker you can see these signals, the better. If we just let these things go, sometimes we don't see the issue until it is actually too late. Chronic fatigue reduces executive functioning. Leaders make worse decisions under pressure, sometimes costly ones. Emotional exhaustion creates irritability and conflicts in teams and relationships. Another aspect is that recovery time for injuries or illness extends. High performers often struggle through sickness and prolonged downtime later. Innovation and creativity also declines. The brain consolidates learning during rest. Skipping it slows down problem solving and idea generation. So doing all of these things really just causes issues for us. This is why chronic fatigue is one of those things that's going to pull us away from our goals. This is why we have to be monitoring our own recovery. So we got to track subjective energy, focus, and mood alongside objective metrics like productivity and sleep quality. Seeing patterns provides concrete evidence that rest improves performance, countering the mental narrative that it's weakness. Without tracking things, we can't see patterns. If we can't see patterns, we can't break the loops, which leads to us being stuck in these cycles and patterns as they continue to go on in our life, causing more and more chaos. This is why reflection is so big. Here is a framework for integrating rest sustainably. First, you want to assess baseline. Track current energy, focus, and sleep patterns. Identify points of fatigue accumulation. What is happening right now? What is your baseline before we're changing anything? Next, we want to categorize rest needs: physical, mental, emotional, and social. Determine which areas are neglected and what things you may need in each of those arenas, so that if you do realize you need it, you can go and get it. Then schedule rest strategically. Introduce micro rest, sleep prioritization, and mental breaks. Treat them all as non-negotiable tasks. These aren't things that you're doing because they're luxuries. These are things you're doing because they're going to help you produce. They're going to help you perform. We then want to follow that by reframing identity. Align rest with your high performance identity. And then finally, evaluate and adjust. We want to use metrics and reflection to refine rest integration and make sure it's working. And if it's not, we can adjust things as we go. By strategically implementing these tools, high performers can overcome the illusion that rest is weakness. They learn to harness recovery as a tool for sustainable excellence rather than a moral failing. Now that we've covered the physiological and cognitive necessity of rest, let's turn our attention to emotional and social rest, which high performers often overlook. Physical rest is easy to measure: hours slept, steps walked, or breaks taken. Emotional rest is more subtle, yet just as critical. It's the downtime your nervous system needs to process experiences, reduce stress, and restore emotional equilibrium. Social rest is the ability to step away from draining interactions and connect selectively with supportive individuals. High achievers frequently confuse emotional and social fatigue with personal weakness. They think, if I step back from this relationship or take a mental break, I'm failing, when in reality, this rest allows them to engage more effectively when it matters most. Emotional inventory is a good way to reflect on how it's going. Schedule a weekly reflection to identify what emotional inputs drained you versus what restored you. We can do this by asking questions like, which interactions left me energized? Which discussions left me tense or depleted? What repetitive thoughts or worries are occupying my mind unnecessarily? High performers who regularly conduct this emotional audit can strategically manage their interactions rather than allowing stress to accumulate unconsciously. Consider the story of Ethan, a software engineer leading a high performing team. Ethan prided himself on solving every problem himself and being constantly available to his team. He viewed time away from the office or social media as laziness. Over months, Ethan noticed rising irritability and strained relationships with colleagues. He didn't recognize it at first, attributing fatigue to temporary stress. Through our work together, Ethan started implementing small emotional rest strategies, like limiting after hours work messages, creating short morning reflection sessions, and delegating low priority tasks. Within weeks, his mental clarity improved. Team interactions were smoother, and he reported feeling more connected and energetic despite working fewer hours. This is why we need social boundaries for performance. High performers often take on too many interpersonal obligations, from networking to mentorship to advisory roles. To maximize energy, evaluate all social commitments and distinguish between high value, energizing interactions, neutral or necessary interactions, or draining or unproductive interactions. Strategically reducing or restructuring interactions allows rest to happen without guilt and supports long term performance. Now let's talk about the nervous system conditioning problem. High performers are typically in chronic sympathetic dominance. Their bodies are in fight or flight more often than rest and digest. The brain interprets downtime as risk, not opportunity, triggering anxiety, restlessness, and self criticism. Overcoming this requires systematic retraining of your nervous system, a crucial tool that most high performers never learn, which is why we use EMDR to help do these things here at Premier Performance. There are many ways to retrain your nervous system for rest. One way is to start small. We talked about it earlier. We want to use micro rests of about 2 to 5 minutes throughout the day with focused breathing or progressive muscle relaxation. Doing this allows us to start adjusting to the idea of rest and that this is okay and that we need it. Starting small is sometimes the easiest way to do it. Then we want to give ourselves permission by anchoring rest in safety cues. We can pair rest with habitual safety signals like sitting in a comfortable chair, low lighting, or soft music. Your nervous system will begin to associate these cues with relaxation, and we are a giant association machine. If we set up an environment for ourselves to rest, every time you're in that environment, your body will naturally start queuing up that relaxation and rest. So you can actually start that process before you even get into it by just preparing a situation or an environment for yourself. Then we continue with gradual exposure. Slowly increase rest periods to 20 to 30 minutes daily, then full restorative sessions weekly. You're training the nervous system to tolerate stillness, and that is a skill all by itself. Some people cannot sit still to save their own lives, and it's not because they see it as a problem, it's because they think it is helping them. They think it's a good thing. Sometimes they attribute success to it, of I'm only successful because of how much I can get done and this work ethic that I have. The thing is, it won't last, and it's going to cause issues everywhere else in your life, including on your own performance. Now let's address the internal narrative resistance that prevents high performers from resting. These thoughts are often things such as, I don't have time, I'll fall behind if I rest is weakness. And all of these things, they're just cognitive distortions, not reality. Thus, high performers can benefit from thought restructuring. We do this by identifying the automatic thought, challenging its validity with evidence, such as performance metrics when rested versus fatigued, followed by reframing with performance-oriented language, such as rest is part of my strategy for excellence. In practice, this might look like a high-level executive reminding themselves before sleep that this 8-hour sleep is an investment in clear decision-making tomorrow. It's not an indulgence. The reframing shifts rest from guilt to performance optimization so we can actually take advantage of it instead of just feeling bad about it. Now let's dive into daily and weekly routines for sustainable rest. Daily, you can do micro rest breaks like we talked about, taking them every 90 to 120 minutes or about every 2 hours. You can also do a morning reflection or a meditation for about 5 to 10 minutes, or even have a scheduled social and emotional recovery time. Weekly is a little different. You can have a full rest day or half day without work or draining obligations. Time in outdoors or nature-based recovery sessions can be very powerful. You can plan to use journaling or debriefing emotionally intense interactions as you go through the week to help offload the emotions you're holding. Consistency in these routines trains the body and mind to expect and benefit from rest, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of performance gains. Now, a story from athletics. And again, it's always confidential, but we'll call this person Ryan. Ryan is a football player. He was a high performer on and off the field, notorious for late night training and reviewing game film obsessively. Despite talent and discipline, his performance plateaued. Coaches noted slower reaction times and minor errors during high pressure plays. Through a structured rest protocol, including sleep scheduling, active recovery, mental rehearsal, and emotional debriefing, Ryan's reaction time improved, awareness increased, and his overall impact on the team rose dramatically. The key takeaway: rest allowed his skill execution to match his natural talent, rather than being limited by accumulated fatigue. Another critical component is the long-term strategy. High performers who treat rest as a one-time fix or a luxury day rarely see sustained benefits. Rest must be woven into our identity, our schedule, and our culture. If you're a leader, modeling rest for your team can elevate collective performance and reduce burnout. People are going to follow us as leaders, so we have to lead by example. So here's a rest integration framework for leaders to follow. We want to model the behavior we want to see. So take scheduled breaks publicly to signal acceptance of rest. You want the rest of the team to know that this is okay. We also have to learn to delegate effectively. Avoid overloading yourself to maintain credibility. If your team watches you flounder and fail, they're not going to trust you as much. They're not going to trust you to lead the same way. So make sure you're not taking on too much. We also need to normalize rest in the culture we are building. Celebrate recovery, mental health days, and breaks for creativity. And it can be really tough because a lot of teams are so focused on what do we need to get done. It's so focused on productivity. So being able to shift that mindset to recovery, mental health, and creativity is going to help get more things done, but it's going to be difficult to do. But you can do it. We also always want to be tracking outcomes. Whether something works or not, we need to know. So document improvements in team performance, decision making, and energy metrics. Make sure you know what is happening, what is working, and what is not. The more we can track outcomes, the better we can find success and efficiency in the things that we're choosing to do. Next, let's cover some pitfalls and resistance strategies. High performers will often sabotage rest by checking emails or notifications during breaks, by multitasking during micro rest periods, by treating rest as a negotiable based on perceived urgency that I don't need this thing right now. So, with that, there are some anti sabotage strategies to combat it. One, we can use strict boundaries. Phone in another room, notifications off. This stops us from checking things when we're trying to take time to turn off. We can schedule rest with calendar blocking like a high stakes meeting, making sure that it's very important. We don't just sacrifice it, but we actually take it. We can treat micro rest as non negotiable protected time. By implementing these strategies, high performers transform rest from perceived weakness into a competitive advantage. And in all honesty, isn't that exactly what we want with these competitive advantages we're giving ourselves? We're trying to build ourselves up and outwork the competition. And we're seeing that the way to do it isn't just by working harder, it's by working smarter. We've explored the physiological, cognitive, emotional, and social dimensions of rest, along with practical tools and real life examples. Now it's time to address the psychological and identity based barriers high performers face when it comes to resting. One of the most common barriers is internalized cultural pressure. Many performers are conditioned to believe that constant activity equals success. From childhood achievements to professional accolades, high performers are trained to equate worth with output. This mindset creates rest as guilt. That feeling that stepping away is laziness or weakness. We can always do some guilt mapping to better understand it. To do this, we first identify the specific guilt thought, such as if I take a nap, I'm falling behind. Then we trace the origin to where it comes from, because everything comes from somewhere. Is it a family expectation? Is it a societal pressure? Is it a self-imposed standard? What was the origin of it? Where did it begin? And at last, we reframe it with a performance lens, that this nap improves my decision-making speed and energy for high-stakes work. High performers who consistently challenge these guilt triggers can reprogram their identity around rest, shifting from I'm lazy to I'm strategic and disciplined when I rest. Another barrier is the fear of losing momentum or control. Many high performers think if I rest, someone else will outperform me or I'll fall behind. This fear drives chronic overworking and reinforces nervous system hyperarousal. The antidote is performance anchoring. Anchoring can help in performance in many ways. We can anchor calmness, we can anchor intensity, we can even anchor activation or even rest. So for this, we anchor rest in measurable outcomes. Track performance before and after strategic rest periods. See what changes. We have to know what is happening and what is not. And honestly, if your rest is not helping you perform better, you're either doing it wrong or we need to do something else different. We always want to be focusing on high leverage activities. Identify tasks that truly move the needle and protect your energy from the things that don't. As high performers, there's only so much time in the day, and we have to be efficient with that time. So we want to make sure we are spending it doing things that are actually mattering and not spending it on things that aren't going to change much. Sometimes that revolves around delegating to other people so they take on the things that isn't going to help get stuff done. Keep in mind we're using rest as a multiplier, not a liability. Remind yourself that recovery enables sharper execution, not less output. High performers also struggle with perfectionism and control over small details. We talked about this in detail in episode 32 when we discussed perfectionism versus excellence, as there is a huge difference. High performers often believe that their output must be flawless and that rest threatens precision. But research shows the exact opposite. Rest enhances creativity, focus, and accuracy. The prefrontal cortex, which governs decision making and problem solving, performs best when it's well rested. Fatigue not only slows cognitive processing, but it also increases the likelihood of errors, ironically, undermining the very perfectionism high performers chase. This is why we need scheduled cognitive pauses. So block time for non work thinking. We could do this with short walks, quiet reflection, or even journaling. We can use deliberate daydreaming. Sometimes we need to let the mind wander strategically to incubate solutions, and this can help with creativity as well. We can also rotate high intensity work with rest intervals. We want to follow the ultradian rhythm, which is about roughly 90 to 120 minutes of focus, about 2 hours of focus, followed by about 20 to 30 minutes of rest. If you can follow that rhythm with your work. You're going to intensify how much you get done, and you're going to be better with what you're doing too. Now let's address societal reinforcement of rest as weakness. Many high performing cultures, from Wall Street to Silicon Valley to professional athletics, implicitly reward exhaustion. Leaders, colleagues, and peers often wear overwork as a badge of honor. This external pressure intensifies the internal narrative that rest is failure. To counter this, high performers need environmental realignment. So surround yourself with individuals who model balanced performance. Who you are surrounded by and who you spend your time with really does matter. If you're surrounded by a bunch of people who just keep pushing through things constantly, it's going to be very easy for you to do it too. If you're surrounded by a bunch of people who make sure to get rest and they normalize that they need to take care of themselves, that's going to be a whole lot easier for you to do too. So let's be very mindful of who we are spending our time with and what they are doing. We also want to normalize recovery language in professional settings. We want to discuss sleep, breaks, and mental recovery openly. We don't want these topics to feel like taboo, like we can't talk about them. So sometimes we have to lead by example and have these conversations first and just put them out in the open as just things that they're okay, and if you need it, you need to go get it. And within the team, we want to incentivize rest. Adding this into the culture can be huge. We want to celebrate milestones achieved through strategic downtime. So make sure to point these things out and show people, because sometimes people just truly don't understand how we can use rest and downtime to be more successful. Next, let's dive into the identity transformation that rest requires. High performers often see themselves as relentless, unyielding, and invincible. To accept rest, this identity must expand to include strategic recovery as a core strength. This is not optional for sustained high-level performance, it is foundational. To do this, first write an identity statement that includes rest. This could look like, I am disciplined, strategic, and intentional. I prioritize recovery as a critical component of excellence. Reflect daily on alignment with this statement. This can be something that you hold yourself to, like a structure. Ask yourself, are your actions reinforcing this identity? We can also anchor our identity through rituals, like a morning meditation, scheduled naps, or even an evening digital detox. Now let's discuss how to measure the ROI, the return on investment of rest, to keep track of it as we continue on. Metrics can include cognitive performance, like improved reaction time, memory, problem-solving accuracy. It could be emotional resilience, such as reduced irritability, better regulation under stress. It could be physical performance, higher energy levels, quicker recovery rate, endurance improving. It could be decision quality, fewer impulsive decisions, more strategic insights. By quantifying rest impact, high performers can shift from viewing it as optional to seeing it as a strategic performance multiplier that we can upgrade. If you can see the ROI through just tracking these measurements, it's going to be a whole lot easier for you to get involved and do these things. If you can't, it's going to be hard to convince yourself these things are actually going to help you. To continue with this idea, we want to use a rest tracking system. We want to track the sleep hours and the quality. This helps us understand where our sleep is at and if it's working or if we got to adjust something. We want to record energy and focus ratings before and after rest periods. Let's see how it's working and what it's doing for us. We want to note decision outcomes or creative breakthroughs following rest. Again, let's see what rest is giving us. We want to adjust routines based on observed patterns for optimal performance. It's not about doing the same routines, it's about finding the ones that are going to help us most. And sometimes what we do need to do is change, and sometimes the very thing we like to do, or the thing we like to do the least, is actually change. Finally, let's tie everything together with actionable reflection questions, mirroring the structure that we talked about throughout the episode. And I want you guys to fill these out for yourself, write them down. Writing them down does change how we come about them. And I want you guys to send me the answers so I can hold you accountable. And I can also give you guys some tools to start working on these things based on your answers. So first question, which areas of your life do you consistently deprioritize rest in favor of output? Second question, how does your current relationship with rest limit your performance or growth? What is it doing to you? Third question, What micro rest practices can you implement today to start rewiring your nervous system? So, what can you do now to start this process? Fourth question: which social or emotional drains could you strategically minimize to protect your energy? What is pulling away from you, and what can we stop? And then our fifth and final question: how can you reframe rest as a core component of your identity and a performance strategy? So, what does that reframe look like for you specifically? High performance is not defined by relentless work, it's defined by strategic presence, energy, and clarity. Rest is not weakness, it is a critical lever that separates a good performer from extraordinary ones. Accepting and integrating rest is a skill, one that requires conscious effort, structured practice, and identity transformation. If you commit to these tools, like micro rests, emotional inventories, social boundaries, nervous system retraining, guilt mapping, performance anchoring, identity integration, and more, we talked about a lot of tools today. You're not stepping back, you're actually stepping forward with greater force, precision, and resilience. Resilient minds, premier results. That's what we're building here with the premier mindset. So, some practical next steps for you guys to take in your life. I want you to choose one micro rest strategy this week and implement it deliberately. Put it into your life and get it going now. Don't wait for later. Don't tell yourself you're going to do it in a week or a month. Do it today. After that, I want you to conduct an emotional and social energy audit to identify drains and energizers. What builds you up in life? What tears you down? Let's start to figure out and identify those things. And then we want to create a rest friendly environment at home and at work. It could be a little corner of the house, it could be a corner of the office, whatever it is, whatever feels right. I want you guys to think about how you need to create something that feels rest friendly, even if it's for 5-10 minutes. And then on top of all that, I want you to track the impact of rest on your performance, focus, and creativity over the next 30 days. If you do this, like honestly, if you truly take these practical next steps and do them and track this, you will see improvements in 30 days. I promise you will. But you have to hold yourself to it and actually give it a shot and try. If you don't, it'll be kind of like anything that you don't really put effort into. It'll be something you think about, but it won't really do anything for you. So give it a shot. Let's see what happens. With all of these things, recognition is the first step. We have to understand what is happening so we can change it, so we can break the patterns. So pay attention to what you're doing and how these things are impacting you and how these things go when you do try and change things up. Because the more we can recognize, the more we can get things done. And if you're having issues with any of this stuff, let me know, as we would love to work with you guys here at Premier Performance to help. As always, this episode is meant to provide tools for performance. It's not to replace individualized therapy. If you're struggling with anxiety, burnout, or persistent stress, professional guidance is always critical. And that is something we provide here at Premier Performance as well. We work with high achievers to implement strategies like these with precision, accountability, and results. And we'd love to work with you guys too. So if you have a desire to work with us, if there's something in your life you want to overcome, let us know. Just reach out to us. And there's a lot of different ways you can do that. Well, going on with all of that, I'd love to hear how this episode impacts your approach to rest. Share it with somebody you know who pushes too hard. Leave us a review if it's helpful for you. Those reviews help us get this in front of more and more people, which is our ultimate goal. And feel free to reach out with any questions that come up at any point. At the end of the day, I make it a point to give you actionable tools to find success in your life. So let me know if it's helping. I love staying connected with all of you guys, and I just want to know how it's going. So reach out, let me know what's happening, let me know about the disappointments, the failures, the successes, and everything in between. And if there's someone in your life that you think is going to benefit from hearing these things or just working with us, either connect us or send something their way and see if it does help. If there's something you want to let me know about or you want to reach out for some reason, there's a lot of ways to do it. The first way is through email. My email is tmahler@premierperformancereno.com. My last name spelled Mahler. You could text or call me directly at 775-561-0056. We have the Instagram and the TikTok with the same name for both of them, which is premier_performance_Reno. Then we have the Facebook page and the LinkedIn page with the same name for both of those, which is Premier Performance LLC. We have our Twitter or X account, which is at Premier Reno LLC. And finally, our website, which is www.premierperformancereno.com. where we do host a whole lot of content, whether it be the podcast, services, testimonials, and anything in between. Like we said at the top, all of our social media accounts are uh, linked in the episode description, so make sure to go check that out and get involved in those communities as we continue to build them. We drop content on those social media sites literally every single day, and we have new episodes of our podcast coming out every week. So next week, what we're going to do is we're going to jump into talking about first responders and the unique challenges they face. We're going to really go in depth of just what a first responder is, who qualifies, what it looks like living a life of a first responder, and the challenges that come up in that life for them, so people can better understand what first responders are dealing with and what they do, and also for any first responders out there listening in, so they can better understand how to navigate these challenges that they do face. So we're going to go deep into that. It's going to be very interesting and fun. I'm excited to do it. Other than that, I hope you guys have a great week. I hope you guys go put yourself out there and go after something. Go pursue what you want. Go chase that excellence. Don't put yourself into a place where you let things break down, and make sure you get that rest when you need it. If there's anything you guys need, let me know. I love being a resource to help however I can. Otherwise, I will see you guys next week as we keep going, and I'll talk soon. Bye.